Hi. So you guys are reading Brave New World largely independently, and I asked you to ask me some of your questions so that we can sort of get on the same page, but also so I can help you with your analysis and understanding of the very complicated, complex text. So let's get started. If you don't see your question, it's because it was either like exactly like someone else had already typed, or I maybe changed it a little so it would like maybe line up with what the text means a little bit more, or it was repeated. I don't know, that kind of thing. So here are the questions. So let's start with characters. Um, Lenina is a woman who lives in the world state. She is like a flat character. So, a flat character is a character that doesn't change over time. And she's just like the perfect representation of the world state and like how conditioning creates people to be who they want to be. And so, Lenina is just like this perfect model citizen of the world state, and she is extremely shallow. She is like driven by uh, pleasures that are not like fulfilling in our culture. And so she's just meant to be like this kind of comparison character for John, who is the savage. So if we'll get to him in a second. Um, all the women in this text, or both of the women in the text, um, this is are subject to their conditioning, and represent the world state and like submissivity. So if you wanted to look at, we're not studying necessarily a feminist take on this text, but if you wanted to look at that, you could say the women are submissive. They aren't the people who are challenging what's wrong in this dystopia. And so it is a little like misogynistic in that. Um, in the world state, women aren't that there's no hierarchy of like men, women, um, or like that social construct that might be a reference to like the feminist structure in our society. Okay, so Linda is a woman who came from the world state. She, like what, 30 years ago, I get, or something like that. However old John is, went to the reservation with the director of Bernard's job, and she like got lost and ended up, and her contraceptives to not get pregnant didn't work. She got pregnant, and then the shame of being pregnant made it so that she couldn't go back to the world state. So she lived on the reservation. So she's from the world state, was forced to live on the reservation by accident. Sorry, go away. um that's my sister. And so she gets old and ugly and kind of grotesque. She doesn't really take care of herself. She falls into like a super deep depression, because her conditioning teaches her that she shouldn't have to be unhappy ever. But she's living on the reservation where she's unhappy always, because it's the opposite of how she was created to be. So she's miserable. She's John's mom, from the world state, lives on the reservation and gets to go back to the world state, and show how she can't cope with that either. The director is just a dude that's in charge of basically like a factory, for making people. It's the hatcheries. The hatchery is the factory for making people. He's in charge of creating people and conditioning them to be in different social classes. He's Bernard's boss. He's Lenina's boss. He's Hummoldt's boss. It's this huge like factory system, and he's kind of like has a lot of authority and is high up um, in that. Mustafa Mond is one of the world controllers, and so I think there's 11 world controllers. It's think of it like presidents of or prime ministers or kings or whatever, not kings, more like presidents or prime ministers of countries. So say there was like 11 countries in the world, each one had a controller. um, Mustafa Mond is the controller of the world state, where we are reading our text in. So the whole world is following this same social structure. It's not just this one like country in isolation. It's the whole world has gone to this place. Um, and these 11 people get together and they make the decisions on how people are conditioned or how what the culture quote unquote looks like. So that's Mustafa Bond. Bernard is one of our main characters. He is consistent in his actions, we're here, um, because he's not like everyone else. And this will come up again with conditioning when we get there, but he's not like everyone else. And there's a question down here with conditioning, and I'll bring it up again. But he's an alpha, and alphas have more intelligence, and just with more intelligence brings more awareness and the ability to reject conditioning. And so, because as an alpha, the highest social class, he's smarter. He's able to see, like, have deeper emotions, have more logical thought processes. He can just see things that maybe lower class people can't, because of their physical, like, conditioning. And so it's almost like he's a mistake. Think about it like that. He So he wants to fit. So Bernard's a really complex character. Here's another question. Why doesn't Bernard stop trying to live a normal life? And so, Bernard, you're hitting on here that Bernard doesn't fit in. He doesn't assimilate to society. He's different and he's an outcast. Um, but he doesn't want to be. His social, like, desire is to fit in and be popular and be wanted, but like because he physically is like kind of not attractive, and he's very short, and he's just like awkward, not like handsome. um he he's rejected. He wants to fit in, and so he wants to try to live that normal life, and so he's kind of just caught in this place where he's like trying to fit in, but they won't accept him, and he's super deeply insecure, and most of his actions will like be based off of the fact that he's like so insecure. He tells people about his experience at the reservation because he wants to, like, I think you're talking here about bringing Linda and John home. He wants to be popular. He wants people to see him and recognize him. Oh no, my son just woke up and it's 11. My husband said I'm talking too loudly. Okay. So I hit on why he's an outcast. And then Bernard treats the director the way he does, which is very badly. And there's a whole section on that we'll come to in a second. Because Bernard's super insecure, and insecure people are mean because they want to bring other people down to their place. And so he treats the director badly because the director notices he's an outcast and doesn't accept him. And Bernard wants to be superior. So that's why he treats the director badly, because he's insecure, he's an outcast, and he will never be accepted into society. John, also aka the Savage, is treated badly at the reservation because he's an outcast too. He looks physically different, than everyone else at the reservation in New Mexico. He was born from two people from the world state. So physically, just he doesn't fit in, and that represents how he could never fit in because of how Linda raised him with the values of the world state in the reservation, and so he doesn't fit in anywhere. He's not accepted at the in the reservation. He's not accepted in the world state. He's too much of both for both places. And he doesn't call Linda mom because John's a super complex character meant to call out and show the problems of, and we'll get there when we get to dystopia, the problems of the world state, and this changed society. And so one of the things about him is that he's super like emotional, just incredibly emotional, very intellectual, um, and those two are connected, which is very unique. And so I think he recognizes he's also been put through a lot of trauma because of Linda. Linda on the reservation was like a prostitute. She allowed the married men to have sex with her, and the men would, I don't know, it was just like degrading to in John's eyes. And so John just like had a super traumatic childhood because of who she is, because of her conditioning from the world state, living on the reservation. And so he doesn't like, he loves her. He loves her and he's very, very, very loyal to her. But I think there's also a disconnect because she is the cause of all of his trauma. I think that's that. Um, I'm not really sure um, what happens in chapter 7 that would make him feel different. Maybe I can, I know who wrote that question. Maybe I can respond back to you specifically. Maybe you're hitting on the fact that he's just different from um, the people out there in the reservation and different from people in the world state. And that would have to be like he comes from both but is of neither. And that's like his one of his flaws. Okay, and then this, why does Helmholtz and Bernard not fit in? That goes back to the same thing of their alphas. They're the highest class, which means they're allowed to have the highest intelligence when they were being created. And so Helmholtz is different than Bernard, though. Helmholtz is going to, and you'll see this in the following chapters, um, be emotionally more aware. And so he is like typically handsome and he fits into society because of how he looks and how he can act and what he's just like a charming guy, but emotionally and intellectually he's like not challenged by the society, and so he rejects the society even though they accept him. And so they both are outcasts, but Helmholtz chooses to be an outcast because of his intellectual capabilities and emotional capacities, and Bernard is an outcast of their choice, I guess. And so that's kind of the difference there. And that'll show up in a few chapters. Um, anyway, okay. So those are the character questions. Conditioning. Um, so I'm just going to talk about this for a while and I'll probably hit on all of the questions, but then I'll go back to it. The world state is controlled. That's like one of our topics that we're studying, but like the point is that the world state is controlled, and that eliminates hunger, war, any like people having different belief systems or ideologies, anyone not agreeing, harm. The control factor comes from the fact that people are created in exactly the same way, and conditioned means basically trained. Think about it that way. Like you train the infants to children to be a certain thing. And so uh, the whole point of conditioning is to create like a perfect social structure, with the exact amount of people in each like sort of little category to fill the social role. And so um, the reason why they have conditioning is because some people in life have to fill like the lower social roles. And so they create people with like lower intelligence and to be physically stronger, to do physical like labor. So they create people to fit certain roles in the society so that everything is perfect and sort of like laid out so there are no problems. There's so they're okay living with the way they are, because that's all they know. They were created to want a certain thing very specifically to fit their social role, however, wherever they are in the alpha, beta, whatever, gamma, blah, blah, blahs. And so they're okay with being who they are because that's how they were created. That's they, and it goes to this question down here. Lenina is a beta? Maybe she's an alpha? Anyway, she's higher class. So she says she's so glad she's not a gamma. And then the question is, what's so bad about being a gamma? It's actually no one class is bad or good, but they for stability, which is like the one of the world state, like stability is like the world state's like desire, right? For stability, people can't move up and down in the social classes. And so they have to be trained or conditioned to actually hate the other social classes and not want to move up or down, for the stability to take place. So there's nothing wrong with any one social class. They just have to think of them as bad or as bad, so they don't want to be that. Um, that's it. It's all for stability. It's also people will fit into their places in society, not move around, fill roles that need to be filled. Um, yeah, I think that's it. They condition babies as soon as they're created, because you have to start from like immediately to create a person to be something to fit into society perfectly. I think that hopefully that explains conditioning. Okay, so let's go to love, sex, emotions, and soma. So, emotions. Emotions are not stable, like by definition. And so they can't have emotions and a stable society. You can't have love, like the feeling of love, and not have sometimes anger. Or you can't like have anger and not want war or protest or let's just stop there. That's fine. And so emotions are volatile. Um, and so to allow emotions in the world state would allow instability. And so the whole purpose of this world that everyone is living in is that there's no pain. And if you have emotions, you have pain. And so there cannot be emotions. They condition those or train those out of people. Um, so um, I don't I think this is a really interesting question, and I loved it. Um, I don't know if they can find true love because I don't know if they can know what love is. Um, the only person that sort of feels love and very deeply and passionately for both family and romantically is John, and he was born in the reservation and does not have conditioning. So I think conditioning does like eliminate the ability to love or have an emotions. And that's why emotions aren't allowed, basically. Why is it so wrong to have feelings? I think it's not just that it's wrong, it's just that they can't. Like, they just don't know how to have emotions because they were trained to not have emotions for that reason. This happiness one, I'm going to put that with soma. So, so that's emotions, sex. So with emotions, eliminating emotions creates stability. Increasing pleasure also promotes stability. And so, what's pleasure is sex and drugs. So, that's what the basis of this society is. It's having like and engaging in pleasure activities with no shame and no feelings of regret. And they just are impulsive. The director, blah blah blah, talks about being infantile. If you want something, you can have it. There's no like denial of pleasure, and that creates a well trained society. Again, it all comes back to stability, and happy people who just like surface level accept happiness are going to comply. They're going to follow directions. They're going to not want to move social classes. And so, what's better than sex and drugs to stabilize a society, right? My husband's not paying attention to me. I'll just laugh at myself. Okay. Okay. All right. My face is getting swollen because I'm pregnant. Okay. So then that brings us to the drugs part. Hey, like, this happens every year. I totally get it that there's like um an ecstasy brand that's soma. 100% get it. It comes from this book. Um, that's just like a title. It's not. Um, it's not actually supposed to represent what is in this book. So you guys get super every year. Everyone gets like super attached to soma, and is like, it's in the real world. We can really get it, and it's like, no, you can't because this is like this perfect drug with zero side effects and is both like depressant and upper at the same time. And so it's like putting them in a trance. And it's not ecstasy. It has like similar effects of ecstasy, but it's not that. And that's what this soma, whatever that you're talking about, is. So it's there's one of the that's answering one of the questions here. It's this one. If someone was available, would people take it? Yeah, people take ecstasy all the time. No, I think that yes, it would be a highly addictive drug in our society because it is this perfect creation with no side effects, with only pleasure. There's no like I don't know dangerous quality about it. Anyway, oh, Why would they name the drug soma? I would love to know. I mean, it's fictional, but it has a different definition in real life, definition in real life than the book. Yeah, it is actually a different drug in real life than in the book, because you can't create the type of drug that soma is in the novel, um, and that's it. So I don't know why I always have to answer that question so many times. If we were in real life, people ask me like every day when we're studying this book. Anyway, it is made out of chemicals. And they all want happiness so badly because that is, and it comes from soma. And so they want happiness so badly. That's a really good question. Um, I would say because that's all they've been conditioned to know to seek. They don't understand that there's joy, which is like a long term, like soul happiness. They don't understand that sadness can bring, clarity, and that there's good results from negative emotions. So they've been conditioned to seek happiness only, first of all. And like, I don't know, if you're told like you need to be happy, then they just are, you know? It's a very shallow, I guess it comes down to like it's a super shallow society. That's all they recognize as the point of life, to seek shallow happiness. That's all they know is real. They rely on the drug for happiness. I think because it's also this is also this question and this one go together. These two. Um, these were really smart. I thought, why does everyone rely on a drug for happiness, and why do they need soma to stay happy if they were made to be perfect? And so, I'm gonna like get back to you on that because that's like a really well thought out question and set of questions there. Because if they're conditioned, you know what? I take it back. I'm gonna answer it right now. They're conditioned to want a certain place in their society, but happiness still has to be created. I just thought of that. So, like, they're conditioned to not like books or not want to go into the countryside so that they'll spend money in the city, or that they want to, do hard labor. But that's like desires, and like, I would say that would be like I don't know, like personality traits, and then happiness is the emotion. So they can't condition you to be happy. They can create happiness with shallow things like soma and mindless sex. So that's, yeah, yes, I stand by that. They're created to have a certain personality trait, soma, and sex, and engaging in like pleasure activities like mindless consumerism encourages shallow happiness that causes stability. Okay, so both things are needed. Cool. Okay. Da 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 da. How come soma became the drug for them to use, and how were they able to survive how they do? Okay, I'm gonna take this part. So soma was created and is distributed by the government. They have like rations as if it was like food. So like the lower level job you are, the more soma you get from the government. Um, and it's like handed out at like the hospital kind of area. And so this drug is from the government. Everyone takes it. You're weird if you don't take it. Soma has such an effect because it was created to have an effect. Um, The Brave New World would absolutely be different, because I think a lot of the mindlessness comes from having shallow happiness all the time. And so, yes, the Brave New World, I think, couldn't exist without numbing your population to emotions and feelings. All right. So, production and consumption. Um, the fourth assembly line is the start of the inspiration of Brave New World. So yes, technology continued, production of cars continued, and what I would even say increased. And so production, or like manufacturing and buying and consuming objects, like maintains a healthy economy and stabilizes like wealth. And so people need to spend in order to like maintain a healthy economy. And so cars, technology, things continued, and are mass produced at an even higher level than we see in our society, so that people can consume and seek happiness. Because a lot of shallow happiness comes from consumption, also. That's another commentary of this book. So, like mindless consumption, sex, drugs, no shame. Um, Why do people in this story seem to not care about the little things? I think by little things you mean like connections with people, or emotional relationships, or just like appreciating nature maybe. And that's because they're created to be exactly who they are. If you're talking about appreciate like the little things, like objects to own, or like, what's that word that I'm looking for, Garrett? Cool things. Um, like like an object, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll use the word object. It's fine. They don't care about them because they have no value. If they're trained to think things are not important and are disposable, and so no one cares about things. Well, they have no sentimental value. Once it's old, one of their slogans that they're taught or trained to think is like, don't buy a new one, don't like fix it, replace it, or whatever. So that's that. The world state is like their country. I talked about that when I talked about Mustafa Mond. So actually, the other societies of the world are the same. The only thing that's different is the reservation in New Mexico. And so they hate it because it's different. And they can't conceptualize that something different would be good. It's impossible for their brains to think that way because of how they were created and trained to be, or conditioned to be. Um, the motto is stability. It's like 3 words. Let me look it up. Stability. Community, identity, stability. So community would mean like the society has to have that structure, in order to work like successfully. Everyone has to have like their place within the community. Identity is like you find your identity within your social caste that you're created to be, and that maintains the stability, that eliminates hunger, war, pain, um, harmful emotions, blah blah blah. So that's the motto. Children and family structures. So people don't have babies because that would be unstable. There would be too many people, and we would run out of resources and food, if you can't stop people from having kids. Um, They want them in the laboratory so that they can create them to be exactly what they need them to be to fit different places in the society. They teach them that having a family is bad so that they won't have kids, so that they can create kids, and the only people in the world will be those that are perfectly designed to create a stable society. He The director doesn't necessarily feel this way. Everyone feels this way, but then Mustafa Mond and the controllers are the people who make the actual decisions. And so it's like Mustafa Mond, director, and then the alpha characters that we have for their society normative families. So they can't have families because families are volatile. When you have a family, and a mom and a dad, the mom and dad start thinking that they get to decide what the kids believe or what they know or what they do or what their emotions are. And those are unstable. Families are unstable. I think you all know that, right? Families are difficult and emotional. And so having a family would upset the perfect balance that's created through the technology and the control that the government has. They can't birth their own kids because there could also be issues, right? People wouldn't be perfect to what the society needed them to be. And that's a really good point, that happiness might in our society and culture come from having a child. I think that is a cultural thing. That's a social construct that we subscribe to. That having children is fulfilling, and so that's just not part of their society's happiness structure. And so this being a father then is shameful. So this saying the words mother and father were humiliating because it's just like this concept that's like not even fathomable. It's like saying dirty words or like calling it's like calling a woman like a whore. It's like that's not even real. There is a fly. Okay. And so it's humiliating to like say that you're part of this structure um, that is so far from our social like normalcy. And so it's just like this embarrassing concept that's like taboo, not talked about, because wanting it would bring instability to their society. And so that's why it was humiliating to be like, it would be like just using like insulting word or thought to, I don't know, I don't want to say like insulting things for our society. So let's go back. Why did Bernard introduce Linda to and John to the director? We talked about this with Bernard's character introduction. Bernard is spiteful. He's angry that he is an outcast, and the director is going to remove him from their society and banish him to Iceland. And Bernard knows that, and so he's like wants to like humble the director, get rid of him, and make Bernard himself popular. All while doing that. And so he wants to like shame the director because the director like doesn't like Bernard. Bernard's just very spiteful, very petty. And that's why he did that. He brought John and Linda back. What is a kid? He has a kid. It's like this super taboo thing to do. It's just not accepted. It's like conditioned in their minds to be terrible. So for them, it's shameful. That's how their structure maintains. I need some water. Um, so no, the director didn't take advantage of Linda. Um, People in the world state give and take sex like super freely. And so I wouldn't even say like people got taken advantage of in the world state because there was no holding back of sex. Um, they just they just had sex, and it was very routine, and like pleasurable with like no meaning, like zero attachments, zero like emotional repercussions at all. And so they were just like having sex. They were just together, and it's in the book as like a piece of text, but the reason why she had John is because there was like an error with her birth control, basically. So it was an accident that she got pregnant, and if she was in the world state, she would have had an abortion like immediately, but they were in the reservation. She got pregnant, and they didn't do that. They don't give abortions there because culturally it's not correct. So he left her because he didn't care about her. There's no emotional attachments or anything. He thought she died, or got lost, and then he left. So he didn't like look for her, they don't have like emotional connections. And so he was just like, okay, you're gone, and left and didn't think about her ever again, until she showed up. Why is saying the words when they're really healing? Why do people think it's a joke when the ninja confront the director? I think they laugh because it is so outlandish to be even talking about this high ranking official of this government like facility, to be a father. Like it was just so unimaginable and embarrassing that they just like it overtook them. Like the reality was so hard to swallow for the people. I think that's why they laugh, and he gets embarrassed, and therefore it's so humiliating to him. It ends his career. So that's that. The title, Brave New World, comes from Shakespeare. The line, "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it." John will say that, I think like at least 3 times while he's in the world state, and he's seeing the just messed up way the world has gone to. What's so important about the title? So at first, when they're in the reservation, he says this, "Oh, brave new world." And he is implying first, like, oh my gosh, this amazing world, and all of the possibilities. And then he continues to use the line when he's in the world state, and it shows like how miserable this world is. This new created world, with people that have limited emotional capacity, and relationships or meaning in their life. And so the meaning of the world of the book, then, if there's like a meaning, it goes along with the dystopian and postmodern genre. It's a commentary. The book is a commentary, and that's why the title is there. And it's ironic that it's Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is like, to many, not to me, I hate Shakespeare, but to many, it's like the epitome of like culture and emotional writing. Um, and so, like, the meaning then of Brave New World is to show, like, where our future is going and what is like our fate, in bad terms, if we are to accept, our trends. And so it's a warning text, which is why our essential question is, what's the future of our society? Because this text is like a warning of like, hey, if we continue to mindlessly produce and consume, to fill voids, if we don't honor sex and relationships and emotion and attach emotions and feelings and gravity to it than if we take drugs to, avoid our problems, if we don't value the family system, like all of the things that you guys could see as like wrong or why are they doing this, it's that's the reason that this text is written, like to show you like these are like exaggerated um concepts of actually what is in our world, like our actual world. And so it's commentary of like what needs to change, the problems that we have. So that's the meaning of the text overall, possibly. You can find something else if you wanted. So it's dystopian and postmodern. There's two things here. There's two questions. Um, This one, why society and the world state dystopian rather than utopian? And is living a world more of a utopia or a dystopia? Okay, so in the question is the answer, kind of. So a utopia is like a paradise. A dystopia is a depiction of a paradise that's actually super messed up. And the reason why it's written or created is to show what we think would be perfect is actually like really messed up. And so, like Brave New World, the country and the countries and the world and the social systems that are created by the controllers, it's supposed to be perfect, right? No homelessness. Everyone has food. Everyone has a job. Everyone has a place. There's no messy relationships or anger. And so it's supposed to be perfect. But because it's perfect, it's actually therefore the opposite. Because we recognize that perfect isn't without pain, or perfect isn't um like, I don't know, I guess what a perfect reality would be is emotionally connected, and meaningful. So dystopia is like a depiction of a perfect world that's actually not perfect. It's the complete opposite. And so Brave New World is not perfect. So, like Victoria said, there's a lot of flaws. Yes, it's not the perfect society. It's like perfect, right? If we were to fix all of our problems, but fixing our problems doesn't make a good thing, is what the commentary is on the novel. So I think this world was thought about and created because Huxley looked at our trends and said, hey, if we keep going in this way, we're going to create a better society that's actually really messed up and really awful. And we're going to be controlled and we're going to be meaningless, basically. Um, it is so controversial, I think, because it talks honestly and openly about things that are embarrassing in our culture. It's embarrassing to talk about sex, because we put a lot of emotion and meaning behind it. It's controversial to talk about drug use as a way to seek happiness because it causes downfall in people's lives. Um, I think that's it. Another quick question: Malthusian um, is the concept that they have population control. One of the things that causes hunger in this world is too many kids and not enough food equity distribution. And so Malthus is the social theorist that came up with the idea that people need to control how many kids they have, and people need to die so that there's enough resources for everyone. So Malthus. So Malthusian is their birth control form, and it's just a reference to controlling the population, which is another reason why they create people. So that's part of like the dystopian genre. And I think most of us are feeling like this is a very confusing. I think most of us are feeling like this is a really confusing book. And that's because it is at your Lexile or above your Lexile level, which means the sentence structures and the vocabulary that are used are very high level at 12th grade or above. The so the structurally it's very complicated and complex, and then the content is complex as well. Asking you to consider the flaws in our society by highlighting them and magnifying them is very difficult. And then the other thing is, I'm not there with you. And if we were doing a book study like you've done for the last 12 years, where we read a chapter and then I described it and then you answered questions in class, I think you'd be a lot less confused. But you're, for the first time, reading a very complex text that's canonical for British literature, postmodernism, by yourself. And it's really hard. You've never had to do that before. You've never really had to learn independently. And so that's why it's hard. It's a difficult book. To begin with, and then you're by yourself. So that was a very long video answering a lot of questions. Hopefully, I answered a question that you were confused about. Please ask me more questions, and that's it. Thanks, guys. Make good choices. Be good people.